Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have a Q&A. I asked for questions on Instagram, Twitter and YouTube, and after quite a few days of pressuring people to ask me questions, I've got enough to record this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the questions from Instagram. And the first person to get in touch over there was Cuppa Books, who had a few questions. The first one is there a book you wish you had written? No. This might be a mildly pompous way of going about this question, but there are no books by other writers that I wish I had written. I might have said on the day that this is a book I wish I could write. I will use The Trouble with Goats and Sheep as an example. I wish I could write a book like that. That has everything that I like in a book in there. In that it's this small community and all of the characters are incredibly well formed. At the time of my reading that, I don't think that I had learned my craft enough to write that book or write a book similar to that. However, I do have plans for something similar in the future. What does your ideal day look like? An ideal day to me is filled with books. I'd say that perhaps my most ideal day actually happened within the last month. Waking up earlier than usual on a day off and treating it like a normal work day. This might sound strange to people, but bear with me. I showered. I put on a shirt. I properly, boots as well. I was walking around the house like I was about to go for a job interview. By 9 o'clock, I was sat in front of my computer and I started writing. And that day I was incredibly productive and I wrote 10,000 words of the next Doris book. And then I also filled a day with coffee and music that I enjoy, and I'll take breaks to read. And there was another time that was similar to this, when I was also writing and finishing something and being productive, was when I would read a chapter of a book and then write a page, read a chapter, write a page, and that really just got me through it because I was reading and writing. And these might seem like the most complete nerdy things to anybody else, but a day that is just filled with my love of literature is a really great day for me. Do you think being on Booktube helps or hinders your writing? I don't think that it hinders my writing. I really enjoy being part of the community of Booktube. I don't really worry about what other people are going to think of my books, so I don't think that that has impacted my way of writing in any way, or people's thoughts regarding books. I don't allow that to impact me. I'm going to go way back and I'm going to talk about being part of a creative writing forum when I was a teenager, and I've got a few people who are on YouTube and friends of mine who will hopefully remember because that's where I met them. Through that, we used to critique each other. Because of this idea of critiquing each other's work and not each other, then it really gave me more of a strong background with dealing with reviews, if that makes sense. So I'm aware that people's opinions are not an opinion of me as a person, they're an opinion of the work that I have written and that I have put out into the world. And so whilst it can be a bit disheartening if someone doesn't like my work, like there are going to be tons of people in the world who don't like it as much as there are going to be people in the world who get on with it, and I don't have a problem with that. Reviews aren't for me, they're for the readers. So I know that that's a completely different topic, but I'm using it here to illustrate that the only possible issue I could have with Booktube is if a booktuber read my book and didn't like it, and I don't mind if they do or don't like my book. So no, I don't think it hinders my writing, but it does lead me to worry that sometimes people only think that I'm in these parts to promote my book. The whole reason I came onto Booktube is because I had been watching it for about 5 years and I always thought that I was too fat to Booktube. I wasn't this handsome ideal that people had of Booktube, and also at the time I was actually leaving reading young adult literature and I was reading more serious books. It even changed the booktubers that I watched when I did that, and I moved away from watching these really high energy people because I preferred the more sedate booktubers. It's what I can deal with. The calmer booktubers are just calming, if that makes sense. And so I did get this worry that people would think I was only doing it because of my book, but the reason I started Booktube was because I'd released a book by myself and I'd taken this book around the northwest of England And I just thought, if I can go out and I can share my work with people, then I can go onto the internet and I can talk about other people's books without any worry. Yes, I didn't start the best, I didn't comment on other people's videos, I tried to keep it as secretive as possible, but now we're here. The next question comes from Charlie Brook. If you could collaborate with one author, who would you choose and why? I don't think that I would collaborate with another author on a book. There were some tentative plans in place for me to collaborate with Joy Winkler, the writer who founded my writers group. A few years ago, Joy did a show. It was a poetry drama, and she toured it around the country. And this poetry drama was all focused on a town, and the poems had different narrators telling different stories. And Joy had this idea for us both to come together and take some of my Doris monologues that were not just related to Doris, but to characters surrounding the series. And we would do this sort of interweaving of her stories and my stories and perform them. However, we never got further than this tentative planning stage because, there wasn't even planning, there was just chatting about it. Then certain things happened within the last few months that have meant that that's stopped. But I am currently reading Joy's book, and I suppose we could talk about collaborating in that way, in that even collaborating with Dane of Dane Reads, in that they have edited my books for me and they've responded in that way and they have helped me make my books better. So there is that. Next we have Sophia of Redhead reading with the question, is there a book with a great premise that didn't deliver that you would like to rewrite? And the answer for this is no. I was properly thinking about this and thinking about all the times I have read books with great premises and I've disliked them. I haven't ever thought about rewriting them. I'd say maybe there's a possibility in future of me responding to a theme in a certain type of way. Because if we think about it, most of the books and the plots are quite similar. It's all about the execution and the characters and way things are done differently. Then we have a very difficult question from Emma of Emma Rosen Books, which is, how are you? To me, that's an incredibly loaded question. I could just go with the stereotypical, fine, thanks, how are you? I personally believe is all anybody wants. I said a few weeks ago I wasn't going to dwell on sadness. And this came after having a particularly low few weeks. Currently, a major feeling for me has been one of being content. I have reached a point of recognising that worry and sadness aren't getting me anywhere. And before anything happened that is affecting people nationally, my dad ended up taken into hospital again. I said it made me look incredibly bad because on the Monday he was complaining of a toothache, and so I took myself off to work early. He went, he had this tooth taken out, and on Tuesday was hospitalised with what they believe was sepsis again. Then they didn't know whether he got E. coli, and he spent a week in there. He's now on antibiotics. He's not supposed to leave the house for his own health, but he's been a bit of an idiot this morning and gone out with my younger brother, so we'll see. But that was one of my major worries. Obviously, certain things have happened in the last week that have led to more worries for myself. But I'm currently not dwelling on worry. I'm currently not dwelling on sadness. And similar to what I have always talked about before, when after my last period of unfathomable sadness, I end up feeling more content taking each day as it comes and living in the present. And whilst I understand that a lot of people are unable to do that, it is something that I try and do. So I push back any thoughts of not having done work and feeling bad about not getting work done or feeling bad about not reading, and I just try and make that the focus of the day I'm on. So currently, Emma, I thank you for your question, and I'm doing well, and I hope you're doing well too. Please let me know how you are in the comments. Next, we have a question from Abby of Abby Mac Reeves. What do you think helped develop your hilarious but dry sense of humour? I have no idea what you're talking about. I actually do not have any idea. I'm aware that sometimes I have a sense of humour that is so dry, people don't actually recognise I'm joking. This can prove problematic. As I have mentioned before, a volunteer of mine, well, there's more than one, but this particular volunteer didn't understand that I am an incredibly sarcastic person. He came to me and he said, should I put these CDs out? And I said, no, it's not like we're a shop or anything trying to make money. I was joking. It might sound mean to you, but that was just me being sarcastic. And Lord, if he didn't go and take all of the CDs and throw them in the skip. But I'm not sure where this sense of humour developed, really. Honestly, if I'm trying to be funny, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work. That I don't think about. I've no idea where it appeared from, and I can't control it. We've done these questions, and I haven't actually been able to answer any of your questions in the positive. They've all been a bit negative, haven't they, really? I've no idea where my dry sense of humour developed. However, I do wonder whether sometimes it could come from my family, because we do take the Michael out of each other very often. There is a line in An Heir to Murder where Alice is getting upset with her parents because she says that they're always sarcastic. How can she be sure when they're being serious? And that comes from my own family. Is we are hardly ever serious. We're always being sarcastic or taking the proverbial out of each other, so it's a problem sometimes. Next, we're moving over to YouTube, where I have one question, and that comes from Emily of Novel Novels. What is your favourite character in any of the books you have written? I don't like to play favourites with my characters. However, at the moment, one of my favourite characters is Primrose Valentine, Alice's mother from An Heir to Murder. This is the first time I've created a female character who, as soon as she appeared in my head, she was positive. No matter what she did, even if something was badly affecting her or someone was being a bit mean to her, she was positive. She's always looking for the good in people, and she is very reminiscent of a few people I know who just apply themselves to everything, and even when met with adversity, they do their best to remember that they're not going to put bad energy out into the world. Primrose proved to be quite a good foil against Alice, who is incredibly sarcastic. I don't know what inspired Primrose. I have never written a character like her before. I'm aware that oftentimes with my female characters, I write a lot of female characters. I'm aware a lot of the time they can come off as sarcastic and acerbic and very northern. And I didn't want to fight that with Primrose, but I wanted to give this sense that I actually am able to write more than one type of person. I'm able to write multifaceted characters, and I'm hoping that I did that with Primrose, and I'm hoping that I did that with all my characters, but she is currently one of my favourites and the one that was just a joy to write. So much so that she actually ended up appearing in a lot more scenes of An Heir to Murder than she had previously been planned for. Now we're moving over to Twitter, and our first question comes from Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventures. How many sheep have you brought into the world? If you did not know, my father is a sheep farmer. And so I have been brought up around the world of lambing sheep and, you know, foot rotting, and that one time in 2018 when a sheep had prolapsed and I had to hold the prolapsed vagina in whilst my dad sewed it shut. I have never actually lambed a sheep. I have never brought any sheep into the world. I have been present whilst the sheep have given birth. I have bottle fed lambs. I have helped count the sheep. I have done all of the other things to do with shepherding, apart from maybe dry stone walling. Actually, no, that's a lie. I haven't done all of the things to do with shepherding. I have been present at every single thing to do with shepherding, but I have always stood in the background. I am a disappointment as the child of a sheep farmer, because I don't like it. I used to really enjoy it, and then there was this shift in my life, and I ended up realising that I actually preferred books. And whilst it is possible to like farming and like the books and do have the two things happening together, Easter 2007 or 2008, I took all of my John Steinbeck's books that I'd taken out of the library up the field with me. And honestly, there is nothing more evocative when reading Steinbeck than being in a quiet field. It's a really nice, warm spring day, and you're reading his work, and it's just solitary and fantastic. But yeah, this year I do actually have to help my brother out more because, as aforementioned, my dad is ill. So we've all kind of said that we'll have to do our bit a bit more than usual. But I doubt that I'll be lambing any sheep anytime soon. However, I'll try and get some lamb footage for you all. Best encounter in the shop. Mel knows about this because she saw on Twitter, but my best encounter in the shop comes from this week. So this is where I finally get to tell the bread story properly. On Tuesday, we ran out of bread, And there is something of a shortage at the supermarkets at the moment. Well, no, there isn't a shortage at the supermarkets at the moment. People have been buying up everything very quickly. And so my mum went out to replenish our stock of bread because we are a family. With our incomes, we're only able to purchase stuff as and when we need it. So she went out to buy a loaf of bread, and there were none. On Wednesday, she tried again. There were none. What we have to remember as well is that whilst my dad has been in hospital, my mum was having to visit him. The hospital didn't have any gluten-free food, so she was having to make the gluten-free food, take it up to him, and then stay with him. And so she wasn't able to get to the shop until everything had been completely massacred. And I was talking about this on Friday because, you know, the shop has been incredibly dead. We've had to stay open because our head office have asked us to. We don't have any volunteers coming in, so it is just us. So I was having this long chat with a customer and we were talking about all of the things people have been stockpiling and how they haven't been able to get anything. And I just mentioned that we'd run out of bread on Tuesday. And when I first started to lose weight in July, the only carbohydrate I was allowing myself was 2 slices of bread every day. Conversation ended, she went off, and I was just stood there. And a quarter of an hour later, this lady came back and she bought me the last granary roll from the bakery. And when I said, tell me how much it is, I'll go and get you the money, she said, no, this is what you do for your friends. I didn't want you to miss out. And then she told me the lady in the bakery wouldn't allow her to pay by card because it was only $1.99, but she would have bought me the last loaf of bread there, which to me means that she actually bought me the last granary roll with the last bit of change she had in her purse. And so that kind of broke my heart a little bit. I was incredibly grateful that this person thought of me enough to go and do that for me, and shows that even though it might seem like everyone's really only out for themselves at the moment, there are some kind people and there are still people with a sense of community about them. And this is the story I want to share in these times more than anything else. So there's that one. The weirdest encounter in the shop comes from 2015 when I thought I was being made redundant. It's a whole story. But they asked me to go and cover in our Alderley Edge shop. Alderley Edge is a place in Cheshire that is renowned for being full of celebrities, being a bit richer, and that one of our shops has had big time celebrities go in, football stars and the like, donating their things. Now, even though I'm wearing my hat at the moment, this could be used to illustrate my point. I'd been working for the charity at that time for 2 years and a volunteer for 6. It was 9:30 in the morning, we just opened, and this customer came in with his wife. She was heavily pregnant, and he didn't take his hat off and she didn't take her hat off, and they both looked a bit sallow. And I won't lie, I became a bit judgmental. I turned into a bit of a Doris myself and thought these were scallies. They were chavs. I didn't know why they were coming into a shop in Alderley Edge. I thought they must be on the rob. I thought they were going to steal off me. And since this wasn't my shop, since this wasn't my stock, and the manager wasn't even there, the reason I was there was because she was at a meeting with our area manager. I thought I have to properly observe this person, and so I followed them around the shop, keeping an eye on their arms, watching them, being incredibly suspicious. Turned out, so he looked at me and he said hello. It's like I recognised him, and then I realised why I recognised him. He was a celebrity. He is currently one of the longer running stars on Coronation Street. And so then he just thinks I'm a crazed fan, and I have spent the last 5 minutes following him around the shop thinking he's a thief. Then my area manager was leaving and I was incredibly flustered because I'm like, oh my God, I've just thought that this celebrity is a thief. What am I going to do? And she's asking me what coffee I want from Costa, and I can't formulate the words. I said, I'll have anything, just like a latte, just anything. And she went off, and I was just there like stuck in the shop with the soap star that I just thought was a thief. Next, I have from Mary Ann Moronsky. What's your favourite type of book to read as a comfort read? I think most people find comfort in nostalgia. And so for me, that would be looking things that I had liked when I was younger. and maybe still appreciate now but don't look at them as much. So when I was ill a few months ago, I got very nostalgic about Xena Warrior Princess and ended up buying books that were like magic and adventure. Still haven't read them because I got better and this need to like ingratiate myself in Xena Warrior Princess disappeared. But some books I usually would think to go back to would be the Miss Marple books by Agatha Christie or Harry Potter. It's been a while since I read that, but they used to be my big comfort reads when I was younger. I'd say maybe you could go for something a bit unctuous or sumptuous. Maybe try a Joanne Harris. That's where I'd go. The books that I know that I appreciate, that I have liked before, that I can find comfort in because I know that I'm going to enjoy them this time round. What would I recommend to read whilst quarantined? I am not currently quarantined because I do have to go to work, but I wish that I didn't have to because I don't feel safe. But a book that I would reach for in times like this would be The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. I know that you, Marianne, got in touch with me and said about how you appreciate England and you're a bit of an Anglophile, and that's definitely a book that will fulfill that for you. Also, this would probably be a time for me to pull out the thicker books on my shelf, so anything over 500 pages, this is the perfect time to read it because you can just sit yourself down in a comfy chair somewhere and read for hours at a time. Make yourself a pot of tea and really go to town. Maybe have a scone. And I mean a proper scone with sultanas. And that's all I've got to say on the matter. We're moving on to our final lot of questions, and these come from Doris of All the Books. How many books have you read this month? Curious if you are reading more or less because of the times we're in. I have read 9 books this month, and that is actually fewer books than I would like to read. I used to go for this whole thing of trying to read 10 books a month, but that went out the window a few years back. Yeah, I'm not reading as much as I want to, but that comes from being sad last month and my reading dropped off. So now I'm still just I'm reading poetry collections and listening to audiobooks. And I think I've read maybe 2 proper books in the last month. So yeah, I'm reading less. I'm reading less than I ought to be. And I'm not finding myself able to stick to any one book at the moment. Nothing is grabbing me. I've currently got about 4 or 5 books on the go. I pick them up and I read them and I'm really enjoying them. Then I put them down and I can't find the mental energy to go on and read them afterwards. So that's a new thing. How about you? How's your reading going? Do let me know. This is our final question from Doris of All the Books. Where did you get the inspiration for Our Doris? This is a story I like to tell all of the time. In 2011, I started attending the Macclesfield Creative Writing Group at Macclesfield Library. We used to do writing bursts to start off every session. And the person in charge of our workshop that day was Phil Poyser, a poet who now has a few books out. And he set a prompt to do with gardening. Indeed, the entire workshop was based around this connection between creating through gardening and writing. I know nothing about gardening or horticulture or plants. Anything that you see in my books related to that is something that I picked up out of the Reader's Digest Gardener's Year. So Phil set this prompt and I was sat there unable to work, unable to think of anything whilst everyone was scribbling all around me. And suddenly Harold's voice appeared in my head. Our Doris has developed an unhealthy obsession with slugs. She's in the garden from breakfast until the one show, pouring salt on the beggars. And then he goes on to say he wasn't one for similes, and that was where the writing burst ended. And then every subsequent week, someone would come up with a prompt, and I'd be unable to think of something, and so I would write an Our Doris short. And over the next few years, people started asking me, when are we going to see a book with Doris? When's that Doris book coming? It was 2012, 2013 when another writer friend of mine, Margaret Holbrook, released her book, Cul-de-sac Tales, that I finally thought, that's how I can do this book. And so I came up with this plan to write 13 monologues, all based around this garden safari and Our Doris trying to become Fifth House. I began to feel like maybe independently publishing it wasn't for me. Got to 2014 at the end of there and properly started working on it in October 2014. Then in January of the following year, Joy Winkler, got in touch with me and she said to me, a librarian, Mike Drew at Knutsford Library, was looking for a male writer to be part of an author panel, and she had told him that I didn't have a book out currently, but my first novel was coming out in the June. I didn't have a book at the time, but it's one of those twisting your arm up your back type moments, an opportunity where you realise that another writer is looking out for you and saying you need to get shit done, you know, pull your finger out, sort it. And so I ended up creating a cover incredibly quickly, making flyers and taking along these flyers to Knutsford Library, where I read from the first chapter of Our Doris because I only had 4 chapters written at the time. During the February of 2015, I properly raced through to get Our Doris done. One big bit of inspiration behind Our Doris, not just the fact that I had to rush to finish it, is that I've always felt like older characters are maligned, and that once you hit 70, it's often seen that that's the end of times for you. And I know that this isn't true. My nan's mum lived until she was 98. I was brought up surrounded by a whole host of strong female characters I wasn't seeing represented in fiction. And so I decided that I would do that. I would go out of my way to show these people. And yes, I am aware that Our Doris is quite an acerbic person, and over time I do believe that she changes, but that's because I was seeing what I liked in comedy, what I disliked in comedy, and I was creating my own story and my own way of telling it. And yes, I'm aware that the prose is inspired by Roy Clark and Alan Bennett and Victoria Wood, my 3 writing idols, but ultimately the work in that book is my own. I am now working on the final Doris book. I think that it's time to let these characters go because I've been working with them for 9 years now. I am aware of their lives and I've spent a lot of time with them, so I think that it's going to be a difficult one to finish writing because a lot has happened in the last 9 years that completely changes the way that I look at this book and this series. So the inspiration for Indisputably Doris came from me having something of a really sad time after finishing the first Doris book. And I realised I wanted to talk about more serious themes that really are affecting our elderly. That's what you get in Indisputably Doris. Doris Ahoy is a book about recalibrating, showing that even though a person is a certain age, they're able to change their views. And I've become very mindful now as a writer that I am not just writing comedy and it's not senseless. And this is why I talk about everything having something underhanded and subversive. 22-year-old Charlie could not write the book where it is now. When I was 22, I could not have written Royally Doris, which is the final book. And this final book is all about someone recognising the damage they have done in the past, trying to aim for retribution, but at the same time being the same person they've always been, and how those two things might seem to oppose each other, but they can be used in a certain way and a certain force for change and for good. I planned this book between 2015 and 2017, and the plan has changed a bit over time. At the core, I now have the story I want to tell that has been inspired by the world events of the last 9 years and the way things have changed. I'll talk about that more at a later date and why certain things I have done have changed, why my comedy has changed. For the most part, I was inspired because I have known a lot of strong, older women in my time that only get represented in very outlandish ways in the media. Yes, there are outlandish moments in Our Doris, and I tried to scale that back. This is all about shedding light on an underrepresented part of our culture. And that's that. I am grateful to you all for your questions. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments. I hope that you're well and stay well, that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.